Set the goal for who you become, not for the result. Fine. Love that. If you're not at that layer yet, set the result for yourself, not for what other people will feel about it. Set the result for how you're going to feel, not other people. That is the inner versus the outer.
It really comes down to who you become and who you help, ultimately. Even though results are still great, and you should still do things for results, but it can't be the only reason. It's got to be for who you become inside, I think.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. It was episode number 1349. What part of your childhood is still running you? Today, for episode number 1350, how you feel about yourself is more important than what you have. Whew. The other day, yesterday actually, as of recording this, I went on the wonderful Jesse Brown's podcast. It's either Inspire to
Rewire to Inspire.
Thank you.
Rewire to Inspire. Yeah.
Great show. Shout out to Jesse.
Great human being.
I was her first guest. She absolutely crushed it. But one of the things we talked about at the end was, she said, you've done all these episodes and you've met so many people. What do you recognize about what's holding people back the most? And I said, you're either under or over when it comes to self-worth. You're either under or over when it comes to self-belief. Okay? After reflecting on that, I had something that if I could add, I would like to add. I think some of us spend far too much time trying to fix our external and not enough time trying to fix our internal. And of course, it can be the opposite. But when we're talking about what we're talking about today, how you feel about yourself is more important than what you have. How you feel about yourself in terms of the amount of work you've put in. How you feel about yourself in terms of your confidence. For the longest time, I thought buying nice things would bring me internal feelings. I thought external results would give me internal feelings. But and here's the interesting thing, if you work on yourself, and by working on yourself, you start to get rid of some of your limiting beliefs, and you start to build some confidence, and you start to build some momentum, and you start to get that stuff rolling, when you do start to get the external results, you're going to feel really, really damn good. Because it's not going to feel like you're faking it. It's almost like there's two ways to get a tree in your front lawn. You can dig a hole and plant a seed, cover it and water it, or you can go to Home Depot or whatever store and you can get a tree and just have somebody bring it in and dig up a hole and then throw it in there. The second one isn't real. It's not like you really grew the tree. It's not real. There's a lot less connection to the tree. There's a lot less pride when it comes to that tree. And I think of us like that. I know you love tree analogies. The redwood, the roots, the palm tree,
the redwood, and the birch tree,
and the palm tree. I just think of it,
and the fruit,
I think of it that way, where if we spent half as much time working on our internal stuff, if and when we did get the external stuff, it would actually probably feel good. It would be supplementary to what we already have, not why we're doing everything. That is the interesting thing about fulfillment. When you work on yourself and you start to understand, you know what, I feel like this is something that could really fulfill me. And you start working on that thing. And on this journey, you have the opportunity to look in these mirrors and say, you know what, I'm insecure about that. Let me work on that. All right, cool. That's a pretty big weakness of mine. Let me work on that. All right, cool. That's a pretty big strength of mine. All right, cool. Let me work on that. Where are these limiting beliefs coming from? Going back to our previous episode about what are you hanging on to from childhood. All right, cool. Let me work on that. And you work on all this stuff internally. Eventually, when you start to get the external stuff, I think it just means more. Because it's almost like you can feel more complete because you have the whole equation. Where if you go out and get all the external stuff, I find it's very, very hard for you to work on yourself internally because it almost seems like you're taking a step back. That's what I did. And you and I kind of had that. We were very successful externally. We had to lose it all to work on the internal stuff. I wish I did it the other way. I wish I worked on my internal stuff long before I ever worked on my external stuff. Now, obviously,
Same.
being aligned and fulfilled doesn't pay the bills. So yes, you have to figure out a way to make money. But now more than ever, I have a firm belief that the way you feel about yourself, the thoughts you have when you put your head on that pillow before you go to bed, the things you say about yourself when you look in the mirror, all of that, that is the most important thing in the world. Because no result is going to make you forget those things.
Kev, you have not seen this, but that's okay. Our listeners, most of our listeners probably have. In the very first Harry Potter movie, there's a scene with a mirror, and it's a magic mirror that Harry Potter stumbles upon. And Harry Potter's family died when he was a little baby. And so the mirror shows your deepest desires, your heart's deepest desire. And so he finds this mirror, and he looks in it, and he sees his family and his mom and dad next to him. And Dumbledore, which is the wise character in the series, eventually finds Harry kind of like going to the mirror all the time because he's longing for his family. Very beautiful thing. And Dumbledore eventually says, I need to move this mirror. Great witches and wizards have wasted away in front of it because the mirror shows our heart's deepest desires. And he says to Harry, Harry, the happiest man or woman on earth would look in the mirror and see only themselves. Here's the thing about the mirror, though. This shows us neither knowledge, nor wisdom, nor truth. It doesn't show us what's going to be or any of that. In this case, his parents are already dead, so it's showing him an impossible thing. And to the point of this episode is how you feel internally. Looking in that mirror proverbially, it's like, can we live a life where if you looked in that mirror, you would see only yourself as enough? And I think what's interesting about this is that when you're young, you would see, if you had looked in the mirror when you were a little boy, you would have seen probably a dad having a dad. You would have seen a nice car, your dream car. You would have seen, in that case, you wanted to own a Winnebago with your friends and
of course
travel the country and stuff like that. I probably would have seen, my dreams of Fortune 50 CEO, tech company, influence, status, love, significance, impact. And I would have definitely seen a dream physique for sure. Like I would have been strong because I was really weak as a young man, and it bothered me. And I hit puberty really late, so that whole thing. And then, by the way, Ron, the other character, sees the mirror, and he sees, Harry's like, look, my parents. And Ron's like, oh my God, I'm winning. Oh my God, it's me. I look good. I'm winning the house cup. And so in this conversation here, I think young people, they tend to have these dreams and these desires, and they're supposed to. What I find fascinating is that as you really do become the person who can achieve those things, you realize it was never about the thing. You realize it was about who you became and the meaning, to your point, and the impact you had. And so there's these 4 different types of goal setters that my girlfriend Emilia told me about. I've always known this, but she created this framework that I think will be really valuable for all of our listeners. The first one is the feeler. So the question is, what's the type of goal setter you are? And again, this is working on the internal stuff. I wish I worked on the internal stuff first too.
Yeah.
Young men in particular, but for both men and women, we tend to have these visions and these dreams and these wants and these desires, but we don't necessarily look inside at personal growth and personal development in order to get them. For me, I was an achiever, so I looked externally. Okay, I need to get this degree. I need to go to this school. I need to get these letter grades from these teachers, from these classes in order to get this job so that eventually I could work my way up to eventually be a CEO. And when I was 26, I got in a car accident, and the listeners have heard about that story most likely. And for the new listeners, we'll share about it at some point. And then Kev at 26, same deal. Not the same deal, but suicidal ideation, sort of when you're contemplating death, it really can flip the script. And that's when Kevin and I, after that, were like, went all in on personal growth instead of just achievement. So we had both achieved a lot, both 6-figure earners, all kinds of stuff, achieved a lot of our dreams. And then after that, we flipped the script and we focused on internal growth. And then we both went broke. But now, again, that growth pays dividends long term, and now we're far beyond where we were. Okay? So these are the 4 types of goal setters. The first one is the feeler. I think this is you, Kev. The feeler. The feeler tends to set goals based on the feeling they want to get. And this could be a feeling in the car. You always talk about how I just feel different in this car. I never got it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel the exact same in this car. Fair enough. But I did feel a little different in a shirt too, so I kind of get it. Okay. The next is the processor. The processor tends to set goals based on the type of process they want to go through. So like they picked their career based on like not the results they can get, but like what they want the day-to-day to look like. So for me, I wanted to be a math teacher, but they didn't make enough money from my perspective based on the life I wanted. A processor would have done it anyway. Screw it. Even if they don't make a lot of money, at least I'll get to do what I love. Okay, that's the processor. The performer, that's me after 26, tends to set goals based on a personal standard they want to set. The person they want to be on a day-to-day basis. So I set a goal to be, have a great physique. Okay, that's the standard I want to set for myself. I want to be that type of person. Okay, so that's identity level, performer. And then there's the resulter. The resulter tends to set goals based on the desire to bring a new outcome into existence. So for Kev, he's big time the resulter and feeler. So you're a resulter and a feeler. I'm actually more of a performer and a processor. So, and I do result too, and I think feelings last. But for all of us, we can put these in order of most importance. So the feeler, the processor, the performer, and the resulter. The feeler wants to feel good about themselves, and they want to feel good having nice things or whatever, achieving whatever dream. The processor wants the day-to-day process. They love systems. They want to do the stuff. They want to do the hard work. They love the hard work. Okay? The performer sets goals for the standards inside of themselves they're going to have to set for themselves. Okay? So they do things that are difficult on purpose because of who they'll become. And then the resulter wants great results. They want status. They want to succeed. They want wealth. They want health. They actually want outcomes. And we're all 4, but we have 1 or 2 that are big. And so, Kev, what's your syntax?
Same again?
Okay, the feeler tends to set goals based on the feeling they want to get. The processor tends to set goals based on the type of process they want to go through. The performer tends to set goals based on a personal standard they want to set within themselves. The type of person, that's the identity level. And then the resulter tends to set goals based on the desire to bring a new outcome into existence.
4, 1, 2, 3.
Yep. Okay, so and I agree. Yeah, that's what I thought too. It's so interesting.
Jesse asked me last night on the podcast, she said, what do you, I'm sure you've heard the quote, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And she's like, what are your thoughts on that? And I said, I think it's false because I only podcast. Think about this. This is weird. This is weird to think about. But I only really podcast for probably 7 hours a week. That's it. It's not that much. All things considered, right? That's not even a day. What do I do for the other 50 hours? There's other stuff. I don't enjoy tracking the finances, right? Like I care far more. I am so hungry right now because I'm dieting, but I care more about the result than I do what the day looks like.
Yeah.
I always have. That's why I'm okay with suffering for most things.
Yeah, because you really want the result.
If I believe it would be worth it, yeah. If I believe it will be worth it, I'm okay with suffering.
This is going to be really good self-awareness for all of our listeners. And again, I want to bring this back to the internal. Because why did I bring this up? If you're doing it just for the result and you don't love who you're becoming, that's going to be hard. Versus if you focus on becoming the type of person you really want to become, you might end up with more results.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, Kevin was the resulter first, the feeler second, the processor third, and then the performer fourth. And the performer is, again, the identity, the mastery, the standard. Okay. For me, I think it's performer first. I do think it's result second. I think it's processor third, and then I think it's feeler last. And so, Kevin, you wanting to go get dinner to celebrate, out in California, and I just was like, I don't know if we should do that. I don't think I care that much about the feeling, because you're like, it'll feel good to be like looking over the ocean, and don't get me wrong, that would be enjoyable. That's just not why I'm playing. The reason I'm playing is for the men we're becoming. And, getting dinner isn't going to necessarily make us a better man, at least from my perspective. And
full belly?
Yeah.
Full belly,
nice
man.
Full belly, yeah.
Hi, my name is Tim Melanson, and I have a web development agency called Creative Crew Agency, and I'm also a podcast host of the Work at Home Rockstar podcast. I met Alan a little over a year ago. He was a guest on my podcast, and we had an epic conversation, and I was just really impressed with his work ethic. And so I decided to jump on board with him, and it's been a little over a year now. My business has grown, but more importantly, I feel much less stressed and much more purposeful with what I'm doing and the direction that I'm going. So I definitely highly recommend Alan. If you're looking for some accountability, if you're looking for some tools, then look him up, take him up on his consultation.
So I did the post of the new car, and I waited. I wanted to really sit with it before I did the post, because I didn't just want it to be, here's a car. In what I don't remember the exact part, but I basically in it said, what I have is far less important than what I did to get what I have.
I think what you have is far less important than who you became to achieve it.
Fair.
And I think that's
fair. Yeah, it
and
almost
who you had to, and then who you had to serve. Think about how many people you've helped.
Yeah, no, it's fair.
Like, how many people do you think you've touched their life in a positive way, if you were really to think about it?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a great question.
It's
over
tens
a million.
of thousands.
No, it's probably more than that.
Yeah, of course.
I just think of, obviously, we have 800 some odd thousand listens. It doesn't mean that's 800,000 people, because people, obviously, if you listen to the show 7 times a week, I don't know. A lot more than I ever expected, for sure.
Yeah.
More than I ever expected, for sure. But I do think that is, the car did something different for me this time than it did when I was 23.
What? Why?
Because I didn't need it to. That's not why I did it. I didn't do it because I had a void that I wanted filled. That's
Whereas
not why
you did when you were 23?
100%. Yeah, I thought it was a shortcut. Kind of. I thought it was a shortcut to self-worth and self-belief and all that.
Can we talk about that? Because it's so weird. It's such a weird duality. Achieving your goals, does feel awesome. And I don't think anyone should ever take that from you. No matter what your goal is, it's the best thing ever when you achieve it. So don't get me wrong. But that can't be the only reason. I used to say this all the time back in the hyperconscious days. I used to say, it's not about the trophy. Winning first place at that fitness show was amazing because I said I wanted to do it, and I went through adversity to do it, and then I proved to myself I could do it. And who I became and what I learned and who I impacted and who I inspired, that's what has meaning. Now, winning the trophy also is awesome. But really, when you think about it, it's just a piece of plastic. It's behind me. It doesn't really...
Yeah.
The trophy itself isn't worth anything. What it's worth to me, because that's a part of my life that I invested, and I learned so much, and I grew so much through suffering. That's what I think matters. And so it's don't set the goal to achieve the goal. You still need to achieve the goal, but it's way more than that. It's who you become to achieve it. It's who you help along the way. It's who you inspire along the way. It's what you learn along the way. And I think that it's weird because when we're kids, we don't really know that. I remember I used to look at guys that look like me now. When I was a young teenage prepubescent boy, I used to look at guys like me, and I used to think they had everything. I used to think, oh my God, they have the hottest girlfriend, and they have the nicest body, and they're so good looking, and they're so jacked, and they have money. And I used to look at that, and I used to be so jealous. And it's like, now that I'm that guy, it's interesting because it's not about that. Even though it's also nice to be, Emilia's beautiful and I'm jacked, kind of, depending on who you're asking. Kevin doesn't think so. But like, compared to me back then, right? Yeah. And it's just fascinating. I think that it really comes down to who you become and who you help, ultimately. Even though results are still great, and you should still do things for results, but it can't be the only reason. It's got to be for who you become inside, I think.
The simplest thing that I can throw out there is when people talk about purpose, I think we forget that purpose is reason.
Yeah.
Like, what is the purpose of a fire extinguisher? The reason it was created is so you can put out fires. That's the purpose of it. That's what it's 100%. For. It can't be... See, this is the interesting thing. This is full circle for me, and this is the last thing I'll say. I used to think buying nice things would make other people value me, so I would value myself. Now, that's not why I do it. I value myself. It's not about that. It's not about somebody seeing me in the car and valuing me. Does it feel good when people do? Sure, but I don't need it. It's extra now. Mm-hmm. It doesn't go into the fund of Kevin needs this. That's not where it goes anymore. That's the big difference. I do agree. Set the goal for who you become, not for the result. Fine. Love that. If you're not at that layer yet, set the result for yourself, not for what other people will feel about it. Set the result for how you're going to feel, not other people. That is the inner versus the outer.
Do you think it's because we're very fortunate to be so significant in so many people's lives now? Mm. And I remember being insignificant. I do. I remember what that felt like. And what's ironic about this is you got that car and whatever, and it's just the car we're using as an example, but like the dreams that we're achieving now, you're doing it for a different reason now, but isn't it also because you actually have significance? Whereas if you didn't, you would be doing it for significance. So I think in some ways, we're all doing these things to meet our needs. And if you don't feel significant, is it bad that you do something to try to be significant? It is if it makes you worse off. So, okay, last piece. I know we got to jump. If you're doing something only for external significance, most likely it's not going to be what's best for you. Whereas if you actually focused on what was best for you, you probably would get significance. That's the thing that's fascinating. Mm. I used to get significance from being the party guy who drank a ton and who could drink more than other people. And it's like, why was I doing that? And now I know, obviously, conditioning in my past, and I grew up around it, but I think it was significance. I think I felt significant, and I wanted the acceptance of my peers, and I wanted to be cool, and I wanted to be, a badass or whatever. And none of that was real. It was all a fugazi. It was all, in hindsight, it was all kind of, it was fun sometimes and whatnot, but it was just kind of like a losing game in a way. It's almost like you're playing a losing game. You can't really win that game.
Right.
Because alcohol is bad for you. And if you tie your identity up in something that's bad for you, whereas if you actually just focused on what was best for you, you would end up with significance. You'd end up with more significance. And that's the conclusion I would like to draw for myself and for the listeners is, what if you just started doing what was best for you internally? You might be pleasantly surprised with the results externally.
And if you convince yourself that your external stuff is going to fix your internal stuff, you're going to spend most of your life doing stuff for the external stuff. And you'll get it, maybe, right? This is, and I said we'll go, this is a very hyper-conscious episode. What I talk about all the time on podcasts, people say, like, why did you hit rock bottom? Why was it so hard? Why did all that happen the way it happened? And I said, my internal state and my external state were drastically different. My internal state was a house that was rotting from the inside out. My external state was a mansion. You'd never know the inside was rotting from the inside out. You would never know. You would never know that.
And then you went to the opposite.
Then I went to the opposite. But
can you explain that real quick?
well,
Okay. When you were broke, but you loved yourself,
yeah, I was fulfilled.
you went to the opposite.
I was fulfilled.
Can you explain that real quick?
Went from having more than enough of everything to and not valuing myself, no confidence, no fulfillment, no certainty. Yeah, I didn't like myself at all. There was not a lot of self-love going on. Okay, leave the job, very broke, very single, very lonely, no external results. Nobody's listening to the podcast. Nobody cares. But I remember I was walking around the kitchen one day saying, like, I'm just super proud of what you're doing. You're doing some really good stuff. And you're a really good man. You've worked so hard on your character. Like, good for you. Good for you. That's a winnable game. Now I just have to go get the external stuff. I'm good. Once you have the internal stuff, you just got to go get the external stuff. That's it. No, again, easier said than done. But it's almost like it's supplementary. It doesn't, you don't need it, but when you get it, it's actually real. It's real. That's the best way to explain it for me. It's just, the car is a car. I do feel more confident driving the car. But when I get out, I don't not feel confident. I'm still Kev. It's supplementary.
That's what you meant by real.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'm not faking it. When you see me driving down the street and I'm smiling or I look happy or I look fulfilled, it's because I actually am. It's not just because it's the car. I looked the exact same in the car before, in the old car, whatever. Again, I know we're using that a lot because there's a lot of breakthroughs that have come with that. But it's that. it's that. I think that's probably the best way to put it. This is a very challenging thing to explain, but I'm glad we tried, and I think we did
I got one
job.
more.
Yeah, please.
Last thing.
Please.
All right, so Kevin went through, the external was amazing mansion, for lack of, just in this analogy. Okay, so amazing on the outside, not amazing on the inside. Then he flipped it, amazing on the inside, not so good on the outside, getting rejected for muffins.
Not ideal.
And then now it's amazing on the outside and on the inside.
Fair.
And that is the journey we're all on. How can you get the inside and the outside to be comparable, to be integrated, to be the same? So that who you believe you are and who you want others to believe you are and who you really are the same. That, I think, is what life's about. And I think you and I personally are closer to that than we've ever been, which is why we're so fulfilled, because it's not ego and it's not faking it, and it's less ego and less faking it than ever, you know? And I think that's the journey we're all on. I think that's what maturing is. I think that's what growth is. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's an interesting conversation. We went hyper-conscious today.
We did.
Alan and I know we said this recently. We said we were recording a course. I jeffed and I didn't order something. I needed a certain piece of equipment I didn't have. So I have ordered it. We are actually recording it next week. So we're going to have another free course coming out in the next month or so. How to level up your self-belief and self-worth, I believe, will be the title. We've just realized, and kind of talked about it in this episode, that is one of the biggest things. The self-worth of I don't deserve, or the self-belief of I cannot create. Those are really the big things holding everybody back, myself and Alan included, in many parts of our life. So keep a lookout for that. It'll end up on the website. Obviously, we will tell you, but it's going to be another free course because, again, not everybody is able to afford or ready to pay for a coach or attend an event or a retreat or whatever it is. So we will have it free on the website when it is done.
This episode right here that we just recorded is launching on Sunday.
Correct.
Assuming that you listen to this within the first couple days of it launching, this Thursday, we have a monthly meetup, June 1st, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, how to stick with something for the long run. 4 rules in peak performance coaching. Rule 1, set up the train tracks. Rule 2, stay on the train tracks. Rule 3, improve the train tracks. And Rule 4, my favorite, never, ever, ever lose momentum. Kevin and I have achieved many of our dreams, and there's still many more to come, and it has not been easy. But one of the reasons we've been able to do that is because we could stick with this podcast for the long run. And here we are, 1,350 episodes later, still doing it. Still trying to get, still trying to get better. Still trying to get better. Still trying to get better. And that's how we've gotten here, is sticking with it for the long run. So if you want help in that, that is one thing we definitely know how to do. And we will help you for sure.
Tomorrow for episode number 1351, is your life based on intention or accident? Hyper-conscious, acutely aware, very intentional. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Keep aligning your internal and external. Next Level Nation.